We play a lot of games in our family, and I credit this time spent together for many of the positive things about our children and home life, so much so in fact that I want to convince you to follow our lead and claim all these same benefits for your family. I am so personally convicted that playing games with your children is great for them that I predict by the time you reach the end of this video, you will have been infected by my enthusiasm and made the decision to buy a board game.
Modern board gaming has exploded these last couple of decades, both as an increasingly popular pastime and as a rapidly growing industry. And just to be clear, right from the very beginning, things have come a long way from the monopoly or Risk of your childhood. If you already enjoy these newer hobby games, do let us know your favourites down in the comments, especially if you think we've missed some really great ones. Now, you may be wondering why a builder of cast iron wood stoves is speaking so passionately about tabletop gaming, but I actually believe this board game revival and the growing popularity of our cooking stoves to be much more closely aligned than you may first suspect. Both share common ground as unplugged alternatives to the addiction of technology. Many are discovering that the conveniences promised by the digital world have not eventuated. Our devices have not gifted us more time, nor have they brought us closer to those people we actually care about, but have instead trapped us, holding us hypnotized to screens, lost down rabbit holes, or in polarizing echo chambers, ignoring those even of our own households as we chase instead electronic validation. A growing number have come to seek out and cherish those opportunities to press pause on technology, to unplug and recharge ourselves. Board game publishers have taken note, with literally thousands of new games being designed and released every year, releases that are as varied as they are many. There are games you can fit in your pocket, and games that can fit you in their pocket. There are loud, boisterous games that involve lots of shouting and laughter, and ones that are much more intense and serious. There are games you can play anywhere, and sprawling games that barely fit on even large tables. There are party-style games that a whole crowd of people can all join in on at once, and games that are strictly for two. There are games that are all about direct conflict, where you are actively attacking your opponent, and there are fully cooperative games in which everyone is on the same side, striving to win together. There are games you can learn and play through very quickly, or super involved games with ongoing stories that carry over from session to session and try to eat up all your gaming time. There are more relaxed, low-interaction games where people mostly just do their own thing, and by the end everyone, win or lose, enjoys the satisfaction of having built something up. And then there are much more competitive, winner-takes-all ones where each little advantage gained has been clawed from your opponents. There are games that encourage you to think creatively, games that require lateral problem-solving, or number-crunching games with plenty of arithmetic, and sometimes even involving literal calculators. There are games of zero luck that play out in a battle of wits alone, and then there are also highly random games that can be won or lost on a single dramatic dice roll or a final exciting card draw. There are very straightforward games that don't really ask all that much of you, and very deep games that reward dedicated players with a rich experience each time they're played. There are games in which many of their mechanics are informed by their setting, and games in which the setting doesn't matter in the slightest. There are games with massive or multiple rulebooks, and games that can be explained in just a few short sentences. There are games that revolve entirely around cards, and games with no cards at all. There are games that play out dramatically differently for all involved, where everyone starts out in asymmetric positions and with variable player powers. There are games that demand manual dexterity, and games that are all about bluffing and social interaction. There are games set across all periods of history, and games that exist within their own fantasy universes or sci-fi settings. There are games about farming, about sewing, about different mythologies, games that play out team against team in real time, games that are simplified versions of best-selling mega-hits streamlined specifically for children, games about grand civilizational clashes, lots and lots of games about trains.
I like trains.
Basically, if you can think of it, there's a very good chance that someone, somewhere, has already made a game about it. There now exist so many different games that even if you're someone who thinks board gaming could never really have anything to offer you, I guarantee there's at least something out there that is going to make you pause and go, huh, that actually sounds interesting. Okay, but why bother? We don't exactly suffer for entertainment choices in this day and age. I mean, you're almost certainly watching this on a device that offers the promise of immediate relief from even the slightest pangs of boredom. Why would you ever want to waste energy and effort, not to mention money, on something as quaint as a physical board game? That is precisely the point. You spend too much time on electronic endeavors. We all do. We are unceasingly bombarded by digital distractions, and board gaming offers an escape away from our devices, away from the pool of notification alerts. They provide a framework with beginning and end to set aside time and say no to that virtual world that keeps making demands on us and intrudes on our ability to just enjoy the present moment and those people we share it with. While other media is often being consumed passively or even completely mindlessly, board gaming is active, requiring your participation and engagement, and not just with the physical pieces in front of you, but engagement also with those people who are sitting around the table with you. This quality time is something vanishingly rare, to be treasured wherever you may find it. I firmly believe that playing these kinds of games with your children is amazing for them, no matter their age. I don't pretend to be any kind of parenting guru or anything like that, but we do have pretty amazing kids, and I attribute a lot of our positive family culture to the intentional decision that Janie and I have made to be deliberate about minimizing that all too easy habit of allowing interactions with technology to just become the default in our home, to instead value the real over the digital and prioritize actual connection above virtual connection. Board games are a natural ally in this battle. There are all the obvious cognitive and developmental benefits they offer to your children. When playing games, they're having all these meaningful learning opportunities, and they're enjoying it. It's a way to practice reading and comprehension, mathematics, pattern recognition, spatial awareness, storytelling, tactile manipulation, symbol identification, puzzle and problem solving, risk assessment, forward planning and delayed gratification, even resource allocation and budgeting. And all of this is happening in an environment that is conducive to natural learning. If you're homeschooling your children and not already taking advantage of this massive resource, you are missing out and need to get on it right now. For those of you with kids in school, board games are an excellent way for you to stay in touch with where they are at and to engage with and encourage their learning. For us adults too, they say one of the quickest ways to grow old is to become unwilling to learn new things, and I know that the regular playing of games has been really great at continuing to stretch my brain in good ways. I think having to hold the rules of a game in your mind as you play it is brilliant for your short-term memory. But then they're also excellent for your long-term memory. It might be weeks, months, or even years later that you revisit some game. But when you pull out those pieces and begin to reacquaint yourself with it, that tactile interaction with the physical objects act as some kind of memory trigger, and the prior experiences just come flooding back. Even just simple addition and subtraction. As an adult, I don't really get that many opportunities to practice arithmetic in my day-to-day life, but regularly playing board games and tallying up victory points or calculating the cost of things to see if I can afford to pull off some grand move has definitely refreshed and improved even just that basic life skill for me. Then there's all the social skills your children will be picking up and benefiting from. Politeness and patience, not least of them, as they learn about taking turns or have to wait for another player to think through a tricky situation, or have to endure the repetition of the younger ones learning a game that they already know themselves. I've had some great opportunities here with the older girls when they have found it frustrating to have to put up with the littlies making mistakes as they learn, to be able to remind them that they also loved the same game at the same age and we were patient with them while they learned. Adults too, we're so overstimulated that boredom or silence has become some scary thing to run from in terror, but yeah, board games do require you to have patience sometimes when someone seems to be taking a really long time on their turn. And I'm not pretending here that board gaming will eliminate dysfunction, leaving only some kind of always harmonious, endlessly cheerful family. Not at all. Sometimes something super frustrating will happen to someone in a game where things don't unfold the way they were anticipating, and because they're feeling all emotionally invested in the experience, it might bring out the worst in them. But that's great! Gaming offers a safe avenue to experience, process, and learn how to productively deal with and express those negative emotions that are an inevitable part of life. I actually think that's one of the main purposes of play in general, be it imaginative on the playground or structured through sports or board games. Play is the way in which we learn how to be social and interact with others, how to deal with those disappointments and setbacks caused by other people. This kind of gentle ego adjustment runs central through a lot of the board gaming experience. At the core of many, many games is this idea that all the people playing have differing incentives driving their actions at any given moment. So you are forced to think outside of just yourself and to consider the motivations and perspectives of the other people. Okay, yes, most often in a game it's so you can then use and leverage those insights in attempts to ruin their plans. But often too, it is so you can identify those moments in a game where your interests might align with someone else's at the table and so work in with each other to mutual benefit. This ability to take on another person's point of view is an amazingly useful skill for children to learn, one that will be invaluable as they interact with all manner of people and navigate their way through all stages of life. I love those kinds of games, the ones that allow for a high level of social engagement where the mechanical operations of the pieces on the table recede and matter far less than what they are facilitating, which is all this rich interaction and drama that's going on with the people above the table. I think this ability to understand and empathize is valuable not just for children, but for all of us. And it's not just some childish or naive empathy that's being fostered here either, the kind that just assumes everyone else must think in exactly the same way we do, so if we're just nice and kind to everyone, they'll then automatically be all nice back to us. Not at all. Games are a low-risk setting in which children can learn that not everyone is always going to have their best interests in mind, including sometimes even their own parents. So simultaneously, they're picking up these little lessons in both empathy and assertiveness, becoming unafraid to advance self-interest. All this is going to aid them significantly on their journey to becoming their adult selves, something that as parents we ought to be encouraging. We should want our children to become capable and confident beings in their own right, equipped with the resilience and courage they're going to need to face a challenging world. As far as I'm concerned, you already have no excuse to not get involved and play some games with your kids. And before you say you don't have the time for it, if you're watching this video and you've made it this far in, you do have the time to spare. I'm not saying you have to play these games with them every single day or anything like that, but commit to setting aside just one regular evening a week where screens stay turned off, devices get left away from the table, you give one another your undivided time and attention, and I promise you, your kids are going to appreciate it. All children really thrive in environments of routine and ritual, and yours will quickly start looking forward to games night with anticipation and excitement. It's just so obviously a beneficial use of leisure time that, quite frankly, I find the idea of instead just handing kids some device to go entertain themselves in who knows what fashion, so parents can aimlessly scroll through social feeds or binge stream the latest forgettable show, to be rather upsetting. And I haven't even made it to the main benefit yet. The single best thing about playing board games with your children is that it communicates to them that they are not a waste of your time. That you didn't bring them into this world just to ignore them, or worse, resent them as some kind of burden to be complained about, but that you are happy to spend time sharing an experience with them without expectation of reward, yet this investment in time does get paid back in well-grounded and secure children. Similar can be partially achieved by involving them in the kitchen or garden, completing chores with them, cooking together, making the effort to sit down to share mealtimes, or by including them in whatever projects you may have on the go. And I think all of that's important, but this is explicitly non-productive time. From this, they learn they are worth your time even, and I'd argue especially, when nothing essential or urgent is being achieved. I mean, I say nothing essential, but I can't think of much that's more essential than this. You are actively fostering a sense of belonging and identity. I remember once Zelda explaining to a friend who was joining in for the first time, "Oh, our family plays loads of games. Here, we'll teach you this one. It's really easy and heaps of fun." And I could see the pride and joy that Zelda had in getting to introduce this girl to a new activity that was such a key expression of who she and who we all were as a family. When we give each other board games as birthday or Christmas presents, we like to write a little note on the inside of the box lid. And then the kids love it when their game gets picked to be the one played and get a real kick out of seeing this little reminder when we open it up that this was something they got back when they were small. Now, I'm not going to pretend that board gaming will immediately be some kind of miracle band-aid to magically patch over or excuse uninterested or uninvolved parenting or anything like that, but without a doubt, it is something you can use as a vehicle to make up some lost ground. If you know that your family is stuck in the all-too-common negative cycle of spending all your spare time separately held hostage by screens, Introducing the novelty of a board game can and will disrupt that, and at least give you a fighting chance to break free from that cycle, if you make the effort. And that's another major thing I really appreciate about board games. They do require effort. Again, it really is like our stoves. So much of our modern lives are all about making everything easier and faster and more convenient, but for what? For all too many of us, all this means is that our lives then race by at breakneck speed as we toil away in fairly unfulfilling jobs just to be able to afford those modern conveniences and electronic gadgets, but then all they do is make what little free time we do get fly by in a forgettable blur. Life ought to be more than this. Activities that involve minimal effort are never going to give more than just shallow or fleeting rewards, no matter how addicting they may be. Meaningful reward can only come from actual effort. So the effort involved in a board game, especially in making a regular game night part of your family's normal routine, is a big part of what then gives it value. Someone, probably you, has made the effort to research and purchase the game, the effort to learn and understand the game, the effort to set it up, and the effort to convince everyone to sit down at the table and play it. If you've never tried any of these kinds of games before and are now feeling nervous or put off by the level of effort I'm suggesting here, don't worry. We're not talking about training for a marathon or anything like that. It is entirely achievable for everyone, so go for it. It's going to be worth it. All those benefits I went into, the learning, cognitive, social, and bonding benefits that I've promised, these do require you to facilitate a good experience for your children, so I would like to offer a couple of suggestions here. If you are someone with a super competitive personality and can't help but exploit your greater experience of a game to absolutely crush those who you're trying to introduce it to, don't be surprised to discover that you've sucked all the fun out of it and now no one wants to play with you. You're gonna want to rein that in. There's no money or anything on the table here. These games are completely zero-stake experiences, so help your younger children along as they're learning, encourage and support their experience. You have nothing to gain by being overly competitive. But this isn't to say you need to do the opposite. If you have tendencies toward helicopter parenting, this is a great chance to take a deep breath, step back, and let your children play for themselves. Sure, offering help when asked for, but don't be afraid to let them make their own blunders and lose as a result. They will get so much more out of that than they could ever from your impulse to take over and direct. If you were the type of parent that rushed your kid in a panic with overly dramatic ultra concern the very first time they fell off a swing and bumped their knee as a toddler or whatever, and are now confused as to why it is that they seem to be so timid and require you to do everything for them, again, board games are a zero-stakes activity through which they can learn to start taking reasonable risks again and to rediscover just how capable they can be without you. Likewise, if you have a kid that fears failure or hates to lose, that's something you can help them overcome through this medium. Not by making sure they always win, but by being gracious in your victories, modeling appropriate behavior when you lose, and by encouraging them to enjoy the experience instead of fixating only on the outcome. Most games are a blank slate with no record of victory. There's no real cost to failure. They can always try again next time. Board games are simply excellent for encouraging this growth mindset in kids that empowers them with the tools needed to deal with things not always going their way, and the lessons they learn here have application much wider than merely within the games themselves. While I'm offering advice, there is one aspect of modern board gaming culture that I think is a large enough negative that I'd like to caution you about. One that may seem counter to my goal for this video of having you purchase a game, but I'd like to warn you about it all the same. The board game industry revolves around rampant consumerism. These thousands of new games being churned out each year, not that many of them are anything special. So publishers engage in a lot of hype and pull out all the usual marketing tricks to try suck you in and get you impulse buying mediocre games. You can find much of the worst of this here on YouTube, actually, with oodles of channels dedicated to riding the hype to get views, and by constantly pushing product, they normalize excessive consumption. He said, not at all hypocritically. Take a look at any of the popular online communities built around board games, and you'll discover posts from people who just couldn't help themselves as they accumulated dozens upon dozens of new games, hundreds even, within just a short window of having first learned that these types of games even existed. People that have mistaken the acquisition of the shiny new object as being the same thing as getting to enjoy the experience of actually playing it. And I've read some fairly tragic accounts of some who have even racked up debt and alienated family to fuel this. Yes, jumping into any new hobby can be very exciting, with that sense of a brand new frontier to explore. And this hobby in particular has that tantalizing thought that just maybe the next purchase might be the perfect board game that is going to suit your group perfectly, and that seductive fear that if you don't buy it, you'll be missing out on some kind of board gaming bliss. But there's no such thing as a perfect or even a must-have game, and there are definitely people out there that have twisted this largely wholesome hobby from an active, experience-based thing that they actually get to enjoy with other people to a passive, consumption-based hoarder-collector type thing, similar to those grown men who collect and proudly display action figures still encased in pristine packaging that will never get to be opened and enjoyed by actual children, that hunter-gatherer a part of our brain hijacked and weaponized against us by consumer culture. Especially, it seems, that where people aren't getting to play these games as much as they'd like to be, they can become vulnerable to this thing where acquiring the game becomes a surrogate, and that exciting hunt for a novel game comes to overshadow the enjoyment of actually playing it. Which, yeah, in my book, degrades something that can and should be so much more into yet another gross avenue for retail therapy that, like all the others, will never patch over whatever inadequacy it is that they're trying to fill, no matter how many latest releases they stack on their shelves. So, my 2 pieces of advice here. 1, focus on playing what you already have with family and friends, remembering that it's the shared activity and the people that matter, not the games themselves. And 2, when you do decide it's time to mix things up a bit by adding in an exciting new game to your collection, don't even look at things released in the last year or 2. There is such a massive glut of great games out there already. There is absolutely no reason to take an impulse-driven risk on the latest, very likely overproduced and overhyped, hot new release, especially as you're still learning the kinds of things your family even enjoys. Stick with the games that people are still loving 3, 5, 10, 20 years later, and be mindful that you have finite time, so each board game offers diminishing returns. Anything new added to your shelf comes at the cost of then having a little less time to spend replaying those games you already have and love. Now, this timelessness is definitely the aspect that I fall prey to about board games as a consumer product. They have no shelf life. You can continue to enjoy them year after year. So they offer an amazing return on investment, but that's provided you're not constantly buying new ones. This idea that they never expire is how I try to rationalize it anyway when my willpower fails me and I succumb to all these very same pitfalls that I'm trying to warn you against, and my wife asks why I'm sneaking yet another game into our admittedly already adequate library, but she'll be thanking me when our children still have entertainment after the collapse finally arrives, the grid goes dark forever, and the sun sets on industrial society. Again, they really are awfully like our stoves, aren't they? On a somewhat related note, if you are from a part of the world where these kinds of games are prohibitively expensive or just simply not available, or your family's current financial circumstances make these more expensive modern games out of reach, do not discount the amount of value you can get from just a single deck of playing cards. Or the alphabet pieces salvaged from an old Scrabble set. There are many, many evenings of fun, laughter and bonding that can be had from just those 2 things alone. These newer hobby games didn't really exist here in New Zealand when I was a boy, and even if they had, we wouldn't have been able to afford them, yet still, most of my happiest memories from childhood revolve around playing fast Scrabble or cards on the kitchen table by the warmth of the stove.
Isaac, why don't you just give up? I don't think anyone's going to play.
I do. Everyone's going to play.
I've written up suggestions on some of the games you've been seeing in this video that your family might enjoy checking out in the description below, but here are some rapid-fire recommendations from us.
Because I love birds so much, Wingspan is one of my favourite games. I really like how cute everything is, like these cute eggs that come in all sorts of different colours, and how on the bird cards down below it says a little something about them. So we're not just playing, but we're also learning about the birds. Because we have the Oceania expansion, we've got lots of New Zealand birds like Kia, wood pigeon, pukiko, and lots of others like kiwi, tui, and we've also got some Australian bird cards like cockatiel, budgie, kookaburras, emus, lots of other cool birds. I really like Groot because also like Wingspan, there are little birds, crows, jays, owls, but the cutest to me are the little otters. And it's a quite complicated game, but it's still really fun when you get the hang of it. Like there's battling, trading, buying. And another cool thing is every player, all the animals do totally different things. Like cats, they're trying to build. And the crows, they're always up to no good, setting plots all around, big traps, trying to take over the whole forest.
Bonanza is one of my favourite games, and I really like it. And the reason I really like it is because I just like shouting and bargaining and trading and seeing what beans I get. I just like it. I like it how all the cards are really quite funny. Here's my favourite one.
Can I? What is it?
Stink bean.
Stink bean.
I like Wonder Ultimate Werewolf. The reason I like it is it's just like I like figuring out things. I quite like being the werewolf because you like have to be secret, and I also like the troublemaker because she gets the power to like swap two players' cards. I don't know why, I just like doing it. It's quite exciting, and I just like the feeling. Close my eyes at night and it's just fun. Another reason I like it, because you have to play it with a lot of players. Normally it's with like our cousins or friends, and I just like seeing them. So it's One Night Ultimate Werewolf.
My favourite game is Dixit.
Look what I can do.
I like it because you get to make up a story of your cards. I like all the interesting different pictures. I also like when the other people tell a story and then you get to see if you have any cards like that story. And I like that it's got rabbits. I like stuffed tables. I like that there's a story, and I like that we're all working together. I always play as Lumpy, the scared elephant. I like Outfox. It's fun to flip over the cards.
Is it?
Yeah.
And they've all got cool names, don't they?
The sneaky fox stole the pot pie. You have to look for clues and figure out what fox it was. I like the Way Monster, and it's my favorite.
Yeah.
That's my best! 50, I have 18. 60, 11, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 30.
30?
Yeah.
Woo!
Guys, who won?
William, he got 30.
No, I got 32.
Mum's home. Mum's home.
Alright, how old are you? You're going to be 3. Tomorrow you're going to be 3. What a big boy.
I prefer games that aren't too mean. So ones that aren't really competitive, where you feel like you're being attacked and things. I prefer ones where you're building something up, where by the end you have a little farm that's ticking over and you've got little people going out to work and you feel like you've accomplished something. I never really played a lot of games as a kid, and so I think it's great watching the kids play, all the skills they're learning and they're having lots of fun together. I also enjoy Carcassonne, which is this one we've just played here, which I think is a really cool looking game.
The games I enjoy the most are highly interactive games where the people you're playing them with matter almost more than what you're playing. Kind of the opposite of the types that Janie likes the most. A lot of the more popular games today are very low interaction games where each player's doing their own little thing. I definitely prefer games where you're competing with one another directly. Things like Food Chain Magnate, 1830, Pax Pamir. But these are all real hobbyist type games that you get the most out of by having a dedicated group that's playing them regularly. But 2 games I would like to recommend to anyone. First is Cockroach Poker. I think this game is brilliant. One of the best things about it is you can have dealt out all the cards, explained it within 30 seconds, and then everyone's straight into it, playing, they understand what's going on, and there's a lot of laughter, and the whole game is above the table It's between the people playing. You got a handful of creepy crawlies and you're trying to pawn them off to other players and you bluff. And people have to decide whether or not to call you bluff. You like cockroach poker, eh? And the second one is Air, Land and Sea. This is a 2-player game. I think it's a really clever game. It has only a few cards, I think 10 or 20 or something cards. And it's the entire game is just the play of these cards. And again, there's a massive scope for bluffing and for what, boy? Tanks. There's tanks in it. And again, this whole game is about getting in the headspace of your opponent.
Have we convinced you to pick out a game to try yet? If not, one final appeal. Setting aside for a second the inevitability of resource depletion and the catastrophic collapse of technological civilization that will follow, and thinking outside of yourself for a moment, board games make pretty good gifts. So if you have a device-addicted child somewhere in your social circle, check out some of the suggestions in the description below, pick them up something small, and the next time you interact, give it to them, teach it, and play it with them. I promise you, you will be pleasantly surprised by the result.